The rest is decade, the Roaring Twenties, the era of wonderful nonsense. It's a jazz age. But was it something more? A time of growing conflict between those who could accept change and those who wouldn't, between those whose minds were open to modern ideas and those who clung to fundamental beliefs, between those who could accept the complexity of the 20th century and try to cope with it, and those who rejected the new and tried to return to an America that was past. And in the struggle, America quickly became a battleground. November the 11th, 1918, a day of celebration. The Great War is finally over. 2 million soldiers begin the journey back home. What sort of America did they lead? The end of World War I brought new fears to Americans about communism. The color red was a statement of communism. Anyone who dared to mess with it was in trouble. Many
Any communists in this bar? Right there, red coat, get him!
Many would blame their own neighbors for being communist.
Oh, his ass on a red light.
Sacco and Vanzetti were 2 Italian immigrants who admitted to being communists, were tried, convicted, and executed of a robbery and murder on flimsy evidence.
I'm not only innocent of these crimes you say I have committed, but I struggled all of my life to eliminate the exploitation and the oppression of the man by the man.
The role of women also began to change. During World War I, women had demonstrated their abilities. A booming economy created new jobs and more women began working outside the home. Women wanted equality with men in all areas. In 1920, the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote. A new independent attitude appeared among young urban women. These new women became known as flappers. These flappers took more risks, cut their hair short, their skirts were above their knees, smoked, drank in public, danced, and even chewed gum. The end of World War I also brought the rise in nativism.
White America, you don't belong here! White America! You're not white enough!
Nativists believed white Protestant Americans to be superior and hated the new immigrants. These new immigrants came from Eastern and Southern Europe. Nativists pushed Congress to restrict European immigration because the new immigrant without skills, education, or ability to speak English was seen as a threat to the U.S. economic stability. During the Progressive Era, the temperance movement thought that drinking alcohol was sinful, led to crime and domestic violence. In 1919, the U.S. passed the 18th Amendment, which banned the manufacture, sale, or distribution of alcohol. However, this did not stop bootlegging from happening. Prohibition led to an increase in organized crime. Gangsters such as Al Capone became rich from selling illegal booze.
I brought you the products.
Many beliefs changed too. In the 1920s, many southern states passed laws making it illegal to teach Darwin's theory of evolution in schools.
It should be illegal to teach Darwin's theory of evolution in school.
Well, after hearing both arguments from the prosecution and the defense, I have to say that I rule in favor of the prosecution. Now, let's move on to sentencing.
John Scopes taught evolution in his Tennessee biology class and was arrested and put on trial for it. The Scopes monkey trial became the most sensational trial of the decade.
John Scopes, a young teacher of Tennessee, had taught, contrary to state law, Darwin's theory of evolution.
A new group of writers known as the Lost Generation rejected the desire for material wealth.
Which went back to the way it was before World War I.
These writers believed they did not fit the patterns of everyday life after the horrors of World War I.
I agree with you. Americans have become too materialistic.
The Lost Generation felt America had become overly materialistic and lacked spiritually.
I also agree. People have become very rich but unhappy at the same time.
During the 1920s, many African Americans began moving out of the South to the promised land of the northern cities. This mass movement became known as the Great Migration. They left in search of jobs in the industrial cities and to escape sharecropping, tenant farming, and deep racism in the South. It changed the culture of these northern cities, especially Harlem, a section of New York. Henry Ford pioneered the use of the assembly line to mass-produce cars. The assembly line led to improved efficiency, which led to increased consumption and lower prices of goods.
The assembly line was born, a technique that was to revolutionize mass production all over the world.
Thanks to Henry Ford, I'm able to pursue my career in the big cities. Yo, Pablo, check out my new car. It's I got it from Henry Ford.
How did you afford it?
Hey, because he perfected the assembly line, that's why.
You think I could go in later?
Yeah, probably. It's the most affordable car there is out there.
It's a nice car.
Consumers began buying on credit for the first time. Installment plans were easy for a person to pay a small down payment and take the item home and then pay a little each month. However, this led to Americans being in debt.
You want to buy this toaster? I would love to buy that toaster, but I don't think I have enough money. That's okay. You could just give me half as an installment and pay me the next month. Ah, that sounds like a plan to me.
The radio was also an important invention because it brought new ideas and new culture.
What's up, Rocco?
Hey, what's going on, boys? Look, check this out. I got this off the new installment plan. This is a radio, as they say. Check it out.
Is that music?
That's music, boys. That gets you crazy, right?
Oh, man.
As the 1920s came to an end, they ended with a crash. Black Tuesday was the day in which America lost it all. The stock market crash was the instant cause of the Great Depression. However, many things led to the Great Depression, such as overproduction, speculation, and buying on margin. But it would take more than just the spending to bring an end to this Great Depression. The crash made people's lives make a 360 turn. Many lost their house, family, and life savings.
You don't even have it.
You're not taking the damn kid! I'm getting the damn kid! Yes, I am!
Have it.
Instead of the optimism of the 1920s, people began to feel worthless. Soup kitchens and bread lines appeared across the nation. Churches and charities did what they could to feed the hungry. With no safety nets such as the unemployment insurance, hundreds of thousands were living on the streets. By 1932, the American public had lost faith in President Hoover, and the 1932 election saw Franklin D. Roosevelt win in a landslide.
That all was well with the United States and that there was no depression.
With the help of his brain trust, FDR created the New Deal. The New Deal marked a change away from the laissez-faire attitudes the government had previously taken with the economy.
What is up, guys? It's Franklin D. Roosevelt, and I'm trying to save these people from the Great Depression with my New Deal, the 3 R's: relief, recovery, reform.
The New Deal legislation brought relief to the unemployed by creating programs such as the CCC, PWA, and WPA, which were called the Alphabet Soup Laws. The Civilian Conservation Corporation gave young men jobs planting trees and cleaning up parks. The Public Works Administration created jobs by building schools, roads, and bridges, and other public projects. The Work Progress Administration created jobs for artists, writers, and musicians to create murals, plays, and other public artworks. The New Deal legislation also brought recovery with the creation of the National Recovery Administration, which set business codes regulating wages, pricing, and practices. The New Deal legislation brought reform. Reforms were aimed at fixing the defects in the American economy so the Depression would not happen again. These reforms were based on the belief that government should protect individuals against the risk that they could not handle on their own. Programs such as the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation insured banks so people would not lose any savings in the event of a bank failure. This restored faith in banks. Another program was the Social Security Act, which provided the safety net to provide workers with unemployment insurance and old age pension, or if they died early. More programs brought reform were the Security and Exchange Commerce, which regulated the stock market and prevented fraud and future crashes. The Tennessee Valley Authority, which created government-owned dams to generate electricity, and the National Labor Relations, which gave workers right to form unions. Spending on the New Deal helped bring an end to the Great Depression, but it would take more than just the spending to bring an end to this Great Depression. It would take a war. It would finally take the massive spending of our involvement in what would become World War II to finally end the Great Depression.